How was your weekend? It's pretty good.
I locked the back doors, okay?
Good man.
Why don't you?
So how was your weekend?
It was fine.
Oh, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
Morning, Bill.
Facebook, and you can choose what you want to hear. We can Facebook choose.
So you could put me on, I'll do the boring part.
Why don't you let me do the boring part? I'm a professor after all. Oh, it's a joke.
You want to start early?
Start early.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Dawn Patrol. I'm Cliff Krieger, your host. I'm joined by Professor Bill Johnson from U.Mass Lowell, who also happens to be my backyard neighbor. And down in Florida, we have Mike Smith. We're hoping Fru Nkimbeng and Eileen Delrossi
Morning.
will come in. How's the weather down there? Mike, how's the weather down in Florida?
All righty, continue, please.
This is not going well.
Well, Cliff, just.
Yeah, I think that the sound is dropping out. I'll try calling you, Cliff, and that way at least you'll be able to understand me. Just give me a second.
Okay.
Please proceed, Cliff.
I am. I'm passing it over to Bill.
Oh, I am going to do it. So you want me to start here, 1775? Oh. Today the low temperature is 38 degrees Fahrenheit with a high of 64. I don't know what the temperature is right now.
It was 40 when I left the house.
Okay, we'll call it 40 then. And it's relatively nice out. The sun is up, which is good news. Nice to have the sun coming up a little earlier.
Hey, Mike.
How you doing? I'm sorry, but the sound keeps dropping out, so I'm going to do it over the phone.
Okay.
And we'll do that. Okay. All right. You can hear me okay now?
I can.
Okay, sounds good.
So am I reading Latin today too?
No, we skipped that.
Okay. So in 1775, on this day, April 14th, the Society for the Relief of Free Negroes Unlawfully Held in Bondage was created. It was the first abolition society in North America and organized in Philadelphia by Benjamin Franklin and Benjamin Rush. I didn't know that was founded so early, an organization like that.
That was a surprise to me, too.
On this day in 1865, U.S. President Abraham Lincoln was shot in Ford's Theater by John Wilkes Booth. Lincoln died the following day. In 1865 also, William H. Seward, the Secretary of State, and his family were attacked in their home by Lewis Powell. I don't know anything about this. Was this related to the assassination of the president?
Oh, yeah. They went after a couple of people. I think they tried to find the vice president, too, and failed.
I didn't know that. Okay, so it was it was a conspiracy to assassinate not just the president, but a series of leaders.
That just shows you how old George Soros is.
I think that's over the top.
All right.
I think that's too much. On this day in 1906, the first meeting of the Azusa Street Revival, which will launch Pentecostalism as a worldwide movement, was held in Los Angeles.
Yeah, the Azusa Street Revival. There used to be a line. I can't remember who had it, but Cucamonga, Azusa, and the La Brea Tar Pits. It was a catchphrase out in L.A. But
Okay.
yeah.
On this day in 1909, Muslims in the Ottoman Empire begin a massacre of Armenians in Adana. So this is the genocide that, at least in some parts of the world, they're very uncomfortable with referring it to a genocide, referring to it as genocide.
That's true. But for the Armenians in Lowell, yeah, that's okay.
On this day in 1912, the British passenger liner RMS Titanic hits an iceberg in the North Atlantic and begins to sink. And in 1964, Rachel Carson died. She's an American biologist and author. I don't know who Rachel Carson is.
Silent Spring.
Oh, I have heard. So this is about DDT.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes. But she died in 1964. I thought that was earlier than that or later than that, but it's from the early 60s.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's an early environmentalist. I was surprised that she went that early too.
Yeah, so I don't know I've never read the book, but this is a book about not having birds in the springtime because DDT was destroying the ability of birds to have chicks and all of that. And DDT was a big problem from
But yet,
environmental.
we were in the 40s and 50s. They were spreading it to deal with mosquitoes, which were their own problem.
Of course,
Yeah.
of course. We just have to be careful when we solve one problem, we don't create another.
Oh, exactly. Every solution creates a new problem to be dealt with.
And on this day in 2007, Don Ho died. He's an American singer and ukulele player.
Bubbles.
Oh, I know Tiny Bubbles. Okay. And this is Black Day in South Korea. I don't know what Black Day is. Do you know what Black Day is?
Black Day is sort of like Valentine's Day, the 14th of February, and there's another day on the 14th of March. This is for all the people that have no relationships. They eat black food on this day.
Oh, okay. Okay. And today is World Quantum Day. I don't know what that is either.
Neither do I. It's beyond my
It probably
capability.
has something to do with physics. I'm sure of that.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just not sure quite what it means on the quantum day.
So we've done the introductions. What's next on the economy? Who would have thought we'd talk about the economy?
That's all we ever talk about. We talk about economy and politics.
Well, yeah, it's a problem.
What would you like to talk about, Bill?
What would I like to talk about? Let's
Yes.
talk about the weather.
You already did the.
We already did that. We already got the weather. Okay.
So the stock market was down, then it was back up.
There was a one-day return of over 9% for the
Yeah.
S&P 500. I don't remember that. I went through the history. There have been, I think, 3 days with 9% returns. One is October 20th, 1987. Had a much bigger return. That was because of a glitch in a big down day, not a glitch, but a big down day, October 19th, 87. And one other day, I don't recall the other day, but it doesn't move up that much.
No. That, I mean, how much of that is, do you think is psychological, people whining about the tariffs and holding their heads and saying that the world's coming to an end, You think that was driving the stock market down?
Well, when you say whining, I think the the president can do real damage to the international trade and the world order. And I think the threat of tariffs, which is what we had, we're doing exactly that. I think the market went down Wednesday. I'm sorry, I don't recall the date. A Wednesday and a half ago, a week and a half ago. On that Wednesday, that Thursday, the market went down about 5%. It went down about 4% on Friday, if I remember right. It was flat on Monday, or maybe up a little, and then down another 5%. So I think all of that was a reaction to the market interpreting like how big this is going to be and what are the likelihood that different tariffs are going to go in place. And then on Wednesday, the president said that he was going to delay it, and the market went up 9%. I don't think it's an overreaction. I think it's people trying to figure out exactly what this is going to do to the wealth of these companies and their ability to make money. A lot of companies now are heavily integrated into the, getting raw materials from Vietnam and China and other countries. And so I think the effects are real. I don't think it's just psychological or complaint.
But given that we have a trade deficit of, what, $1 trillion?
It's gigantic.
I think it's
36 trillion, 36 trillion.
Oh, no, that's the national debt. This is,
national. Yeah.
there's the federal debt is
Well, Cliff,
36.
why don't you just say you don't know?
What?
You don't know.
Well, I don't know.
It's big.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that with all this stuff going in the stock market, the reason things, and I'm sure Bill can enlighten us more, is that the one thing the stock market does not like is unpredictability. They like to know what's going on so they can take their analytics and figure out how they're going to trade stocks and make money. But all this stuff from day to day, there's tariffs on one day, there's tariffs off the next day, there's a 90-day pause, now it's 10%, now it's 40%. The stock market, they don't like that. So if things calm down where they can predict on what's going on, then you'll see I believe you'll see a more settled stock market. So.
John,
Yes, Cliff.
on the interwebs, call up National Debt Clock and look in the lower left-hand
No,
corner.
you wanted he quoted the national debt. You wanted the trade deficit.
Yeah,
I don't think the
On
national
that-
debt clock will tell me the deficit, but I'll go look.
thank you.
So according to Wikipedia,
Yeah,
not that this is the best place to look, but it's the first thing that popped up. It's about $1 trillion. Just
Yeah.
over $1 trillion is the U.S. trade deficit. So to be precise about what the trade deficit is, this is the difference between what the U.S. exports and what the U.S. imports. So we import about $1 trillion more of goods and services than we export.
and how long can we sustain that?
It might be here, Cliff.
Look in the left. Look left
The
and
Doge clock. Look left. Okay, let me just, this way over here, state debt clocks, world debt clocks, time machine. There's a
you want
lot
the
of-
U.S. debt clock. And in the lower
you
left-hand
continue.
corner,
You continue, I'll look around for it.
in the lower left-hand corner. Yeah, not that far down.
Well, it just popped up, nothing I can do about it. You gotta wait till it goes away.
Yeah.
Unfunded debt, this guy, U.S. total debt.
No.
All right,
Yeah. But about $1 trillion. But, I mean, is Trump wrong in thinking that we can't sustain $1 trillion a year?
So I think you need to be careful and put it in economic, in the right place economically. So the first thing to keep in mind is the U.S. does run surpluses with some countries and deficits with others. That's a natural thing in the world economic order. I heard one person write about deficits as if it would be like forcing every country to have a zero deficit, trade deficit with the U.S. would be like requiring every supplier of Walmart to buy an equal amount of stuff from Walmart that they supply. but would it make sense for Levi's jeans to have to buy the same amount as they supply? So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. The U.S. is a wealthy nation, so when we buy a lot of things from Vietnam, part of it is that we're a wealthy nation, and our economy is based on different types of things. We have a lower savings rate than, say, China or Vietnam, and because of that, we spend a lot of money. I would also point out, we've had a growing economy, growing wealth. How long, you asked specifically, how long can this sustain? I don't know the answer to that, but I think what people want is they want to consume. And this has come out of, since World War II, when people go to the store, they want to buy things. And so I think making things more expensive just so they won't buy them doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. So inflation's down. Job growth was strong last month. These are all good things.
Fru's here too.
What?
Fru's here.
Hello, Fru.
Good morning, Cliff. Good morning, everyone. The line is breaking. I don't know if I should call you on my phone.
Yes. Give me a call. And then we'll bring the mic over here. No, not that. Yeah, that one.
Now I won't be able to hear Mike.
Mike's on the phone.
Oh, good.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think the economy, I mean, let me speak before last Wednesday. The economy has been doing well. Unemployment is low. Job growth, as you pointed out, has been good. It's a little difficult to predict precisely what's going to happen, but as Mike pointed out, what businesses don't like is uncertainty. So if they start canceling orders for raw materials from China, or they stop, manufacturing because they don't know what import tariffs when the U.S. sends goods to Canada are going to be, I think it's problematic. We've seen increased costs in gasoline and oil in the Northeast because things are coming out of Canada. There's uncertainty right now. Also, the consumer confidence index is down as well. So it's strong, but it looks like it is slowing, and people are now increasing the probability of a recession coming up.
So, Fru, you're giving me a call?
Okay.
The Brent crude price is $64.50. That's not bad. It had been up at 82. All right.
Right. So the one thing to keep in mind is that when people anticipate a slowdown in the economy, the price of oil will typically go down. So that might be a signal of negative things to come.
Okay.
It's not clear, right? Of course, you can also cause the price to go down by people producing more oil. But I think most of the oil producers have not. They've been reluctant to pump more oil.
It's not going to work, Cliff.
And what's the problem? What's the solution?
Fru has too many sound sources on right now. He's listening to us over a speaker. The speaker is repeating into his microphone on his phone. It's never going to go away.
My phone is on my computer, and Zoom is off.
Okay.
Is that better now?
I'm still getting scrambling. You guys can hear the scrambling in the background.
Yeah, very little.
Your show.
All right. But bringing jobs back to the United States could be expensive. What somebody said, iPhones could be 25% more. Someone else said they could be $3,500.
Yeah, I think the $3,500 figure in the long term might be high, but certainly in the short term, that's not unreasonable. A new iPhone right now is about $1,000. The problem is that we don't have the manufacturing capacity to do that.
No.
So we're set up to take all the parts and ship them to China, and some parts, of course, sourced in China and other places, and then everything assembled in China and shipped back to the U.S. But I don't think there is a relief right now. The administration, I saw this on Friday, said electronics are going to be exempted from the tariffs. But I certainly think, you're looking at a big increase in prices if we are making stuff in the U.S. Certainly in the short term, there'll be a lot of shortages.
But if we're making stuff in the U.S., that means U.S. citizens are earning paychecks.
Well, I think the presupposition that you're going to convince companies to bring business back to the U.S. is faulty. What the president right now is doing is creating uncertainty about whether or not there will be tariffs. He said there would be tariffs, then he said there wouldn't, then he said there would. The market reacted. Then last Wednesday, he said they're waiting for 90 days. This doesn't encourage manufacturers to build big manufacturing plants in the U.S. Also, in 3.5 years, there's going to be a federal election and we'll have a new president. It's not clear that the new president will have the same policies as the old president. So, if you think about the investment that needs to be made, it's not clear you're going to convince companies to build plants in the U.S.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's if the policies are consistent for this administration and the next one and the one after that, of course, eventually companies will say, okay, well, we've got to do stuff in the U.S.
Bill, let me ask you this question, okay?
Sure.
How long can the United States continue to spend a lot more with other countries and not get it back? How many? 1,000 years?
Are you talking about the trade deficit, or are you talking
Whatever
about
you want to
debt?
call it.
Well, those are different.
Whatever you want to call it.
Those are
Okay.
different things. I mean,
Okay,
so
okay,
the trade
okay.
deficit is the amount we export versus
There's too
import.
much stuff going on over here. Put the camera on me and I'll yell at you, okay?
Okay.
It's just this simple. You buy a BMW. No, you buy the brand spanking new Mercedes-Benz convertible. It is actually a fantastic, beautiful car. It's 86 grand. That 86 grand, probably 80 of it's going to Germany, and it's never coming back here. Why is that?
Because someone in the United States decided they wanted a
Why
Mercedes-Benz.
is the money never coming back here?
Oh, that's not true. That's definitely not true.
Okay, how's it coming back here?
Because in Germany, they're buying parts from the U.S. They're buying services
So
from the U.S.
of the $80,000, so this deficit that Cliff talks about, the trade deficit, it's imaginary, correct, in your mind? How long can we continue this trade deficit?
Did you say it's imaginary in my mind?
Apparently, yeah.
It's not imaginary. I
My question
quoted
is-
the number. I
my
looked up the
question is-
number.
While I'm yelling at you, my question is, how long can the United States continue down this path?
Well, eventually, I mean, I suppose you could argue if we don't have any money, we can't do that anymore. So as long as the U.S. is producing enough goods and services that we have cash to
Okay,
buy,
Mr. Economist,
then it will it can
how
continue.
many years?
I can't tell you when the next recession is. I can't tell you the next time the stock market will
So
go up
is this-
30%.
Is this a good thing?
It's not only a good or only a bad thing. I think free trade is actually beneficial and creates wealth for the world. What do you want me to say?
Never mind.
Let me give you an
Never mind.
unequivocal statement. Since you want an unequivocal, tariffs are bad. How's that? Tariffs are worse than anything we have going on right now.
Never mind.
If you want me to give you an unequivocal yes or no, I'll say
You think this can go on forever and it's perfectly okay?
can what going on? The U.S.
Never mind.
I want to be precise. No,
withdraw.
I want to
My
give you a
question-
precise answer to a precise
Doctor-
question.
Doctor, I'm sorry, I withdraw all my questions.
Well, I'm shocked by this.
No, you're not. I do it all the
Because-
time.
Up until now, I've always thought that John McDonough thought that it was all magic and it didn't make any difference and it could go on forever.
Could we ask Fru to hit mute on his phone?
Fru, could you hit mute for a second?
Bingo.
There we go.
So, Fru, when you want to talk, just unmute your phone, please. See, his speaker on his phone
Yeah.
is jumping over to his microphone on his phone. That's the chatter we're hearing.
So we have two things we have to worry about. We have a federal debt of $36.7 trillion. And then we have a trade deficit of $1 trillion. And those are two different things. I think I'm more worried about the national debt because we have to fund that by paying interest to all the people that hold that debt. And that's up towards $1 trillion a year right now. That's, who was that, not Everett Dirksen, I can't remember his name, from Illinois. He used to say $1 million here, $1 million there, it soon adds up to real money. That,
Cliff, let me put it to you this way, okay? You have a car. You have to be concerned about how much gas you have in the tank, if the oil light's on, if the motor's running hot, is there air in the tires? That's at least 4 things you have to be concerned about all the time. And the last time I checked, as long as you keep writing checks out of your checkbook and there's no money to cover it, the bank is not going to like you. The United States has a very bad habit of writing checks and borrowing money to cover those checks. I don't like it. Apparently, you two guys think it's perfectly okay to do this until the sun burns out.
actually, this is 180 out from how this conversation normally goes.
I never said anything about writing checks. I think actually the deficit is a big problem, and I think Cliff and I agree with that. I would say that's a bigger problem than the trade deficit.
Fru had something to say here, I think.
I just wanted to ask, has anyone solved the problem that precipitated the outsourcing? Why was there outsourcing? And how can tariffs bring back the jobs at home when the cost of labor at home is triple more than the cost abroad? Wasn't it the cost of labor at home that precipitated outsourcing?
Yeah. Now, I read an article where someone said this all goes back to Nike, where they developed the shoe, they developed the sales network and the advertising all here in the United States, but they went to China to make the shoe. And that's why it was a great shoe, but it was not that expensive. So yeah, we outsourced that work, just like Fru said. And
Yeah, you can probably go back to the 90s and you hear a lot of people, I will never forget Ross Perot saying, do you hear that sucking sound? That's the sound of jobs going to Mexico, right? So this is during the discussion about the North American Free Trade Agreement. This is a long argument about globalization, and I think it has happened. I don't think it's easy to put that genie back in the bottle. I think I mean, in a sense, this is what Donald Trump is trying to do, right? He's trying to make it expensive to make things in, specifically now, China, and saying, look, China is exporting way more to the U.S. than the U.S. to China, and we want to put tariffs to help eliminate that. But I don't know that you can easily do that. We've already seen exporters from China open plants in Vietnam. So then they ship it half-made to Vietnam, and then they complete it in Vietnam and ship it to the U.S. It's a very challenging thing. I think actually the Trump administration in part wanted tariffs on every country in the world, in part because of that strategy of, trying to get around tariffs through another country kind of thing.
But Bill, and that can these things change just by verbal pronouncement? It takes time, and probably by the time it sinks in, the pain is too much, and the new administration could come in and scrap it up. You mentioned a point like that, so it's not like it's an administration that may go in for 8 years. But the question is, as tariffs are happening, you are creating opportunities for these competitors to get markets elsewhere and get raw materials elsewhere. When once they establish those lines of communication, it will be very, very difficult to come back. So it is a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I think that's true.
I just want to add on what Bill was talking about, how, like, for example, China ships stuff to Vietnam, and then they have Vietnam put on made in Vietnam for their, where it's being shipped from, or the country it's coming from. The other issue is the non-tariff barriers that some of these countries put on for the U.S. trying to import into those countries, where they make ridiculous rules. I remember when I worked for Kodak, products we had to ship to Europe. It was a whole different list of items that we had to, or hoops we had to go through in order to get those products okay to ship there compared to other countries. So the U.S. tends to have less barriers for stuff coming in here than other countries have. And then the other thing is the subsidies that these businesses, these countries are giving to support their businesses, and so that they can put out cheap things. I mean, China's known for subsidizing a number of their businesses to make it so that people can't compete against them. Those are the things we really need to address more than I think this tariff stuff. If we could get the rules to be the same for everybody, then I think we would have less issues.
Mike, I think you bring up a good point. No country, especially China, has just said, okay, we'll drop all of our tariffs against the United States. That'd be the best strategy for this guy who runs the president of China to do. We'll drop all of our tariffs, Mr. Trump. And you know what? Trump would go ballistic because his trick didn't work. Back to you, Cliff.
But we do have free trade with many countries, right?
But now, when you say free trade, that's a deceptive word.
The Donald Trump signed a free trade agreement with Canada and with Mexico
What does free trade mean?
without tariffs.
And do we have the same regulatory power that a Canadian has if we're going to sue a Canadian company?
Every country has its own sovereign laws.
So I would take that as a no.
Then with that context, then you'd say you could never have free trade with any country. I mean, obviously you're never going to import into Canada and be able to not comply with Canadian law, but comply with a U.S. law. That would be ridiculous.
May I ask Bill whether there are no companies in this country that the government subsidized also?
Oh, the U.S., well, so there's another big subsidy that we should talk about as well. It's not really a subsidy, though. It's the way our companies are set up. So in the U.S., when General Motors manufactures a car, a huge percentage of the cost is the healthcare costs of the employees and the healthcare costs of retirees. And because of that, General Motors has to pay those costs. In China, the government nationalized healthcare, and there's many other countries that do this. And although that's not a subsidy according to the World Trade Organization, it's a drag on U.S. economies because of the healthcare system that the U.S. has. So the healthcare doesn't get paid for by the government; it gets paid for by General Motors, and that makes our cars more expensive relative to cars made.
Then what about farmers and agricultural subsidies?
Oh yeah, the U.S. has big subsidies. During the last Trump administration, the administration subsidized farmers because of the tariffs. They put tariffs on Chinese goods. The Chinese responded with tariffs on agriculture, and so
because those are things that if we are talking the intellectual, we should also explain that we know exactly what is happening in our own economy. If we just talk blindly and give that narrative to the whole world as if we don't equally subsidize, it doesn't give a fair and educated discussion.
No, you're absolutely right. I agree with you.
Yeah, I think that Bill has brought up a point that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. Yeah, because like my son lives in New Zealand and it has nationalized health care. And Kathy, when she lived in Canada, had nationalized health care. So that cost to businesses in the U.S. to pay for health care and for all their employees is a substantial amount of money, where like in Canada or New Zealand, that money comes directly out of each worker's paycheck to the government. So the businesses, that's not a cost to them any longer. So they can make their products cheaper and more competitive, or even better than competitive when they go to other countries to ship the products. So I think that, if the U.S. wants to look at, we always ask the wrong questions. We don't look at the big picture. I'm glad Bill brought that up about the healthcare issue, because I had forgotten about that. That if we change something like that, I think we could be more competitive in a lot of these areas. I mean, it would cost the workers more out of their paycheck, maybe not more, because it would be everybody paying into it. But, like you said, in China, the government does this, and it comes right directly from the workers, not from the businesses. So it's tariffs is everybody looks at tariffs, but you got to look way beyond tariffs. There's a lot of other moving parts that are affecting things. And unless we look at the whole picture, we can't really get a handle on how to address this.
Yep. For the strange issues, I lived in Europe on the continent for, almost 10 years. And on the interstates, the Autobahn or the other high-speed highways, you didn't see very many American cars. You saw French cars, German cars, Swedish cars, Italian cars, but we were not exporting a lot of cars to Europe. And was that because our cars are so bad? I don't think so. I think maybe it was non-economic impediments to sales.
You didn't see any Jeeps? We left a bazillion of them there after World War II, and they lasted a very long time.
Yeah. But I didn't.
Understood.
I mean, and they had their own problems. I remember one time I got rear-ended by someone, and it ended up, I had to get the engine block redone, and it took them a week. This was a Volvo that I'd had for some time.
Well, why didn't you have an American car?
Because I bought a car coming back from Europe, and I got a good deal, and I took it. So they had the short block was done in a week, and 2 months later, the last part that they needed, I went on a trip from Italy to Oslo, Norway, and I bought the part and gave it to the dealer. So they had their own problems. Strange. Do you ever go out to restaurants, Bill?
I do.
Yeah. I saw a little thing that said that restaurants like Red Lobster, TGI Friday are filing for bankruptcy Cracker Barrel, Applebee's, Outback, Denny's, and Robin Hood are closing restaurants due to plummeting sales, but Texas Roadhouse is doing okay. Are restaurants in trouble, do you think? Are we just not going? I mean, I know John tries to keep restaurants going by taking a crowd out once a
And
week.
tonight, we're going to 110 Grill,
All right.
Jimson.
But we have no Texas Roadhouse around here, right?
Yeah, it's in Methuen.
Methuen?
Yeah,
Ah.
beautiful. Packed parking lot. Every time we go there, I can't, well, I use my handicap placard, but everybody else has to park in the mall next door, and they walk to the restaurant.
Cliff,
Yeah?
I'd like to ask Bill to explain something about the politics of sanctions. Whether that is it really becoming effective, or it is pulling adversaries together to weaken the effects of sanctions?
I think that's a reasonable question. I think to understand sanctions, you should think about specific cases. I'm not sure in general it's a good idea to generally talk about sanctions. So, I would say in certain cases, maybe North Korea or Iran are good cases to talk about. The sanctions can actually cause the country to be more isolated, but also reinforce the regime. So I'm not sure that anyone would argue that the sanctions on North Korea have made the government more likely to change or anything like that. And I think that's problematic. But when you have bad behavior by a country, I'm not sure we have a lot of alternative mechanisms to try to affect change within a country. Most of the other mechanisms, I would say, are illegal or wrong.
Yep.
We don't come on Channel 8 till 7.
I was just listening a discussion because of the sanction and the political drama that's going on. That if you are friends with the United States, it is at your own risk. If you trust the U.S., it's suicidal. And then someone analyzed some countries that they have been friends and trusted us, and you name it, they have been bombing, there have been wars and all those, and because they trusted and believed it, but it came to be suicidal to them. I don't know if that it was a think tank group that I was listening to. They came up with that. But I'm equally saying that when with a government, it's a government because they don't yield to their own ways of doing things, they impose the sanctions. And if you start doing that randomly, those countries they start getting together to fight off, and the case of sanctions becomes diluted. You look, part of it, what brought out the BRICS formation is something like that, because sanctions just became like a bully tool.
So I think you raised a lot of important things to think about. The first one is that the United States needs to be very careful in using the banking system and the other mechanisms through which sanctions are imposed, because of course the more you use them, the less effective they become. I also think the U.S. has to be very careful about not putting it on countries because the United States has a policy disagreement or something like that. I think that definitely is a big problem. I think sanctions should be reserved for only the most egregious behavior, for instance, one country invading another country. I also think the U.S. probably over time, and this is something we've anticipated in the U.S. since the 90s, someday there will be more power in collectively other countries outside the U.S. We're seeing that now, that the U.S. and Cliff sent us an article written in France by Thomas Piketty about the rest of the world saying, well, the U.S. may not always be reliable. So we need to think about sort of where our future lies. And, sanctions are a very blunt tool. I think they're an important tool, but they should not be overused. I'll say that.
Can you define sanctions?
Fru, do you want to?
A cloudy word, sanctions.
Fru, what I would say, and Fru, correct me if you disagree with this definition, I would say it's using international trade and banking systems in order to impose penalties on countries for bad behavior. So cutting them off from the SWIFT banking system, for instance, not allowing them to sell their oil in international markets. Those I would define as sanctions.
I think you are right, but when you bad behavior is relative, because we are independent countries and we are different cultures, different parts of the world. But when one person assumes the power of being the police, the sole police of the world, it becomes arrogance, and we tend to abuse that because power corrupts and absolute power becomes very, very dangerous. And that is exactly what is happening, because we need also to be very, very careful, because no condition is permanent.
Yes, I think that's true.
Hey,
A simple definition of sanctions is when your wife says to you, that is unacceptable and there's no sex for a month.
On that note, city life is on in every community except for Lowell from 6 to 8. Lowell is the only community that carries our broadcast that only runs the second hour. So for those folks thinking that they can't see us in Lowell right now, that's LTC. That's not anybody else. It's LTC. Thanks.
So, real quick cleanup, because I want to get to Canada. National debt yesterday afternoon was $36.72 trillion. Our federal expenditures were at $7 trillion with an official budget deficit of $2 trillion. So we're just driving that national debt up and up. And I don't think we're going to solve the problem what the tipping point is today, but for maybe the next time you're here, we can talk about this some more.
Well, at what time do you pull the ripcord? Question goes to Cliff first, since nobody over at the table seems to think this is a big problem.
John?
Cliff?
Do you remember me saying,
Cliff?
let's talk about this next time?
No.
Next time.
Let's talk about today.
No, we have other things to talk about.
Like what?
Canada.
Canada.
There's an election 2 Mondays from now.
Cliff is addicted to that ginger ale, have you noticed?
I am addicted.
Is that Canada Dry?
Schweppes.
Oh. Wow.
So
So you don't like the Canadians? You drink Schweppes ginger ale, not Canada Dry.
moving right along, I was hoping Mike would have some input on this. Canada is different from us. They've got a monarch, Charles III. They have a governor general, Mary, I assume it's Simon, S-I-M-O-N. And then they have a Prime Minister, Mark Carney, who replaced Justin Trudeau just a little while ago. And then they call the snap election, which means, we're going to have an election in a month. Let's go, guys. So the election's 28 April, and there's 172 seats in Parliament. Oh, no, you need 172 seats for a clean win, which nobody has. So you have the Liberals, who are the progressives. Their color in Canada is red.
So everybody has to be reelected?
Yep.
Yeah, the entire legislature's up
How
all
about
at
the
once.
president and stuff, the king, whatever they have there?
There's no president. It's the prime minister, it's a
Okay, how about the
legislative.
prime minister? Now,
Yeah, he's one of the members of parliament.
he's got to be reelected. He or she has to be reelected. Good.
Yeah.
Interesting. So right now Canada's in park.
Well, they have a government
I know, but it's in park.
for the next 2
No,
weeks.
it's in campaign.
They're just campaigning for the next election.
But the government's in park.
No.
So is the candidate also, is the prime minister also will be re-elected again?
Yeah.
Wow. So
But they don't, I mean, they don't know who the prime minister is yet. But the prime minister, whoever becomes prime minister, is the head of the party who forms the government.
Wow, that is complicated.
Yes.
Yeah, well, they do this in New Zealand and a lot of these they do it in other countries similar to this. I'm just going to give a quick summary for the way it works. In Canada, they do have mandated elections that they have to have them every so many years by a certain date.
5.
But they can do these snap elections earlier and before that mandated date and have an election. So, and then in Canada, they don't elect a prime minister. The party that ends up in power or the coalition that ends up in power picks the prime minister. So the people don't get to vote for the prime minister. But, and then they have governors in each province. So that's the quick synopsis on sort of how their elections work.
So if Trudeau is still a candidate, if he wins, he can become, if his party wins, he can become the prime minister again.
Yes.
Yes, but I don't think that would happen.
Not going to happen, though.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Not going to happen. But you are correct, Fru.
So the Liberal Party, Mark Carney is the likely prime minister. They have 160 of the 172 seats. And then the Conservatives have 119 seats, and their leader is Pierre Poilievre. And then you have the New Democratic Party with 24 seats, Jagmeet Singh, and they support the Liberals, so the Liberals can pass legislation. And then there is the Bloc, is that how we pronounce that?
Quebecois.
Quebecois?
Quebecois.
Oui, la bibliothèque.
Yeah. And that is Yves Francois Blanchet. They have 32 seats. But they're polling in fourth place. So, I was kind of put off by Mark Carney from the Liberals, the left-wing party. He apparently said that they're going to have to restrict speech for
Mute.
what?
Fru, hit mute.
Oh, Fru, can you hit mute, please?
Go ahead, Cliff.
Good. He said that he wanted he's on controlling online speech because of safety and misinformation. Canada has no free speech specified in its constitution. So that.
Do they have an official language?
Yes.
They have 2 official languages.
So they don't have an official language.
The United States doesn't
Yeah.
have an official language.
It's English.
The United States does not have an official
Yes, it does.
language.
The president
in
declared it.
Canada.
The United States does not have an official
Bill,
language.
the president declared it's English.
Yeah.
The law doesn't say anything
you
about
miss
the
that?
Constitution
Did
and
you
the
miss
laws.
that page in the paper?
I never saw. I don't know what you're talking about. Which president said this?
President Trump.
He said English is, well, he's
He
wrong.
issued an executive order.
He did?
Yeah.
An executive order is different than
That's
having
not
a law or a
official.
constitution. We do not have an official language in the U.S. I agree
I
with
didn't
Bill.
even know he did that. That's very strange.
Well, hey, I'm just putting it out there. English is the official language of the United States so far as President Trump is concerned.
But that was the case as far as he was concerned before he made that edict too.
Cliff tells the best story for why it is reasonably the best idea to have an official language. And Cliff, would you remind the audience of the Russian ship that sank? And if you don't remember the story, I'll be happy to.
I don't remember the story. You tell the story.
All right, well, let me go back over here. I'll put myself on camera. Okay, so this Russian battle cruiser is in the Atlantic, and it's during World War II. And the guy who's got the binoculars spots a German U-boat. So, and he says in his language, I got a U-boat off to the left, whatever degrees it is. The guy who's on the radio that's listening to him does not understand the language that the guy is using. So he has to get his friend to say, hey, what's Charlie saying? And he says, Charlie says there's a U-boat. Where's the U-boat? Now he gets the information up to what's called, I call fire control, so they can fire at this thing because they're all enjoying lunch or whatever. They're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And they get the attention of fire control, and the fire control doesn't understand the guy communicating with him. He gets his buddy. What's he saying? There's a U-boat. Meanwhile, the torpedo hits the cruiser and sinks it. That's why it's important that we have an official language aboard a ship. Can't dilly-dally.
Cliff,
Yeah?
I was just saying that there looks seems as if there's some confusion in France. Marie Le Pen was found guilty and barred for running for 5 years.
Yes. That is true. She apparently she allowed her party to use funds from the European Union to finance her headquarters for the National Rally Party. There are some people that think that European governments are just cracking down on people to the right wherever they find them.
But I think we need to be careful. If she broke the law, she should pay the penalty for breaking the
Broke
law.
Now, just a second. On 495 right now, most of the traffic is doing 75 miles an hour, all breaking the law. Now, if the state trooper pulls somebody over, is that fair?
Well, they should pull them all over.
No, he pulls you over, and me and Cliff go flying by, and we just like say, oh, they got Bill.
So your question was, is that fair? No, it's not fair.
Okay.
All three of us should have been pulled over.
The 1,000 people are doing 85.
Okay, then all 999
Yep.
other than me should also have been
Yep.
pulled over.
So is this a common, so going back to this politician who spent government money in the wrong way, does everybody do it that way? Do a lot more people do it that way, or they just don't? See, because sometimes, like in the U.S., in this state, if you're a Republican, you're in trouble all the time. Whatever you do, it's wrong. You're Republican. It's because you're breathing. You're to some Democrats.
So it's fine if Democrats and Republicans disagree about things, but I think it's problematic to question the rule of law in the way that you're implying, that the law is selectively applied. If the law is consistently applied, then that's the way the law is supposed to work. Now, if the law is, well, you're a Republican, you're going to jail, you're a Democrat, you're not going to jail, I think that's wrong. Well, it's wrong. It's also problematic, but it's also problematic to raise that issue if it's not true, John, because that undermines the rule of law as well.
Well, Bill, the way I looked at how the FBI went after Trump during during President Biden's term. I just think that was going on.
He broke the law. You know how I know that he broke the law? Because he was convicted of breaking
and
the law. A
so
trial
did-
of his peers found him guilty.
And so did President Biden with his son's laptop.
So anybody who's found guilty in a trial by a jury of peers is unambiguously guilty.
And anybody
I don't know
who
enough.
uses a federal agency to cover up his family's crimes gets off scot-free.
I don't think Donald Trump should get off scot-free if he commits crime, and I don't think Joe Biden should get off scot-free.
He did.
If they commit. I mean,
You
I'm not.
choose not to know, Bill.
No.
You choose not to know.
No, I'm not choosing not to know. If Joe Biden committed crimes, he should be held accountable to them. I don't.
Nah, he's too old.
Well, it also raises the issue, and this is an important one.
Ben-Hur said so.
Hey, wait a second. How old is Joe Biden? If I can tell the state cop, I'm too old. How old is Biden?
Someone made the point, and I think it's an interesting one, that this conviction will just strengthen Marine Le Pen's party, just like the lawfare against Trump strengthened Trump.
Donald Trump broke the law.
Joe's 82 years old, so sorry,
That-
I got a ways to go.
Trump was convicted, but I'm saying
By a
that-
jury.
But politically,
It helped him.
It helped
that
him.
I would agree with.
And it would, Macron should pardon Marine Le Pen to take that out of the political stew and not allow her to build more support on it.
And on that note, we're going to go to break. We'll be back fast.
Because I do think the rise of the right is problematic in Europe. Which right though?
We have sort of the fascism of the left in Europe right now. So free speech leaders, right? The right that I'm talking about are the people who act like Victor Orban. Yeah. People who demonize media, people who demonize the EU while taking money.
Just so you know.
Okay. Fair. Yeah.
Welcome to City Life Show. I'm Cliff Krieger, your host. I'm joined by Dr. Bill Johnson from U.Mass Lowell. Out there we have Fru has had to go off to a medical appointment. We have Mike Smith. How are you, Mike?
Good.
And we may even have Eileen Delrossi. Are you there, Eileen?
She's here in spirit right now.
She's here in spirit. Okay. Hello. Oh, you sound horrible.
That's her Halloween voice.
Are you in? Do you have a cold?
Yeah, it's called. Eileen thought she was in her early 20s last week and forgot she's in her mid 40s. And I did way too much, and I paid for it this weekend.
Okay. So, Eileen, since we have you here, I saw that.
But you're still breaking up a little.
I saw that there was for Wednesday's meeting of the school committee, there is a report on
Got a response?
yeah, you got a response to your parking at the STEM, and they're promising,
Yeah, Cliff, do you want me to call? Can I call your phone because you keep
Yes.
breaking up?
call the phone.
She can drop out of
Okay.
Okay.
She can kill Zoom.
Yeah, you can kill Zoom then when you call.
We'll just keep Mike.
And so I'm waiting for Eileen to call.
It's okay, continue.
We have a school committee this week, and it's all about the school committee this week is all about lunches for the students. But what about the response for the STEM Academy parking?
Basically, it says the plan is in the works to add, well, it's saying it's adding an additional 20 or more parking spaces in the courtyard by fencing in the large grassy area where the playground was installed, which will allow us to separate the two spaces and use the paved area for parking. Please note this will not eliminate the need for parking, but will certainly help the congestion in the back of the school. A possible solution will be to ask the City of Lowell to add parking on Highland Street, just in from the corner of Thorndike Street, where the portable classrooms once sat. I look forward to having the discussion with the City of Lowell to better enhance the parking needs of the school. But I asked John, how many teachers' cars park in your lot? Is it 20? More?
Well, teachers and parents, and I let them use it. I don't have a problem because their hours are opposite ours, but 20, at least 20, if not 30. Wow. And then when school release happens, it can bump up to 40 or 50 cars.
So it's more of a parent pickup flow issue as well.
Yeah, I mean, Eileen, to be quite frank about, we're all working with it, and
Yeah.
as long as they go out the right driveway, I got no problem.
Okay. Yeah, no, I just, I'm all about that. Just in general, I just wish they would be more proactive than reactive in situations as a school committee person.
Well, Eileen, I think the problem is we have too many out-of-towners who work at the school department.
Why is that a problem?
They don't care about parking.
The
going
people
home.
that live in Lowell,
People who work at the school work at the school, and they depend on the school authority to provide everything that they need. Like, you're retired Air Force. Did you worry about where the jet fuel was coming from when you had your fighter jet? No, just came. Did you worry about getting the engine fixed on your jet plane? No, they had the parts. You depend on the system that's there, and the school teachers across the street, they're going to put brand spanking new classroom. Nobody said they put it in your parking lot. They didn't tell the school teachers they put it in the parking lot. Most of the teachers thought they were going to put this new building where they had the portable classrooms, which is on the railroad station side of the Rogers School. And when they started in the parking lot, they went like, that's interesting. But what's done is done.
okay.
But I still think I honestly still think, John, you're very nice to allow it, but if there's going to be a conversation with the city, why don't you say, I'm all about helping it improve. What can I do? But at the same time, if they're paying every Tom, John, Sally, why can't they pay you?
Hey, Eileen, I'm okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Going back to Canada, the U.S. is having an impact on the election up in Canada. I've heard, I don't know what Mike's heard, but the conservative candidate was ahead of the liberals, and then Trump got inaugurated and was talking about making Canada the 51st state, which never made sense to me. I would have thought it would have been the 51st through 62nd state. But anyway, the Pouvra, the populist guy, had a 24-point lead, and it went away because I think Trump influenced the voters and turned towards the liberals. I don't know. Have you heard anything like that, Mike?
Well, I know a lot of people are not happy with what's going on with the tariffs and that. I talked to there's a lot of Canadians down here in Florida that come down for the winter. Now, with the new registration that people have to register and, do the online I-94 form, I know at least one person I talked to about, he says it wasn't hard to do. Canadians don't have to get fingerprinted like other people from other countries have to. He says, I just print out the paperwork and, every 30 days, I just go in and re-up it. He didn't seem to think it was a big thing. Other people are not happy about it. But I can tell you that the U.S. is just enforcing something for Canada they didn't do in the past. I know for a fact that people who are coming in the U.S. from Canada, who are not U.S. citizens or green card residents, had to go into Customs and Border Patrol and get fingerprinted and photographed. This has been going on forever. And the reason I know that, because sometimes I had to go in because I had a common name and they had somebody on the most wanted list. They wanted to verify I wasn't that person. Okay? And I saw it happen where people had to come in. The Canadians just didn't have to do it. My son and his family that are coming from New Zealand had to fill out visa forms. I mean, he's using his U.S. passport, so he doesn't have to go through everything, but his wife and son have to go through all this paperwork and get, the visa, and when they come here, they'll get photographed. So it's all they're doing now is just enforcing something they hadn't done before. It's just that the Canadians are not used to it. They're not happy about it. I can tell you that. They're not happy about it. The bigger things that they're unhappy about is to talk about the 51st state and the tariffs. A lot of Canadians go across the border and that are on the border up in Canada and come in the U.S. and buy goods because they're actually cheaper here. And they come back across the border. The Canadian government is now enforcing that if you exceed the amount that you're allowed to bring back in the time that you're gone, they're charging you full tariffs, like 25% or whatever they're charging on goods going into Canada now. So I think that the bigger issue is the tariffs and the registration for coming in the country if you're here more than 30 days.
Yeah, I think we've seen Canadians be very negative in their views toward the U.S. I don't know if you guys saw videos of Canadians booing during the U.S. national anthem, during hockey games and hockey games and basketball games in Canada. So it's traditional to play both the American and Canadian national anthem at games in Canada. And I think in the U.S. as well for NHL games. But Canadians are now booing during, or at least I saw videos of Canadians booing. But I think it's the tariffs. It's the fact that Trump had a free trade agreement that he signed in 2018, and now he's putting tariffs. And also the rhetoric, as you point out, Mike. The rhetoric is not helpful to call Canada the 51st American state, to sort of poke Trudeau in the eye. I think Canadians took that very personally, but it's definitely polarized and helped the Liberal Party because the Conservatives are seen as being aligned with Trump, and there's, as you said, Cliff, there's a 24-point swing, which is a huge swing away from the Conservatives and toward the Liberals in Canada.
Yeah, I just want to add on a couple things. I think the booing at the national anthems is uncalled for. You don't see the Americans booing when the Canadian national anthem is played in the U.S. And we have coffee every Tuesday. We always say the Pledge of Allegiance, and we always sing the Canadian national anthem. So that one thing, that does upset me, that they're doing that. Number two is a lot of people don't realize, and like I said, the tariffs, I'm not on board with all the tariff stuff. But what's happening is countries, to get around the tariffs, are shipping stuff to Canada, and then what's happening is then the stuff is being shipped from the Canada in the U.S. So it's the stuff that these countries are cheating on, so to speak, that is the big problem. And most people don't understand that, why some of this is happening. Like I said, I don't agree that tariffs are the solution, but I do know some of the reasons why this is happening. A lot of people aren't aware of that. It's the same thing with China putting stuff into Vietnam and then saying it's made in Vietnam where it was really made in China.
Mike, I'm just going to ask it about the booing. I was made to understand by an attendee up in Canada, they had signage up that said boo. And that's what prompted the crowd. Did you hear anything like that?
I don't know anything about signage.
Okay.
I don't know anything about that.
Thank you.
Let's,
Mike, I have a question for Mike. What, do you know if you're related to John Smith from like Pocahontas?
I don't think so. My family comes from Ireland, and I also have from I'm just trying to think of some of the other places my family comes from. But Poland, my one grandmother's family is from Poland. So I don't think we're anywhere from John Smith. So.
When you said that about your name being Mike Smith and having to be called in for different situations, you must have unique stories. Because it is, I never thought of, like, I mean, obviously I know your name, I know who you are, but, like, it is such a common name, how easily it would be to get confused with other people.
Well, the issue is that there was another Mike Smith, and he was born on the same day and year I was, but he was on the Border Patrol's most wanted list. The only difference is that he was African American, and I am not. But it didn't seem to matter to the Border Patrol that there was a big difference. There was more than one situation where I had to go in and verify who I was. So I was eventually able to straighten that out with Border Patrol so they didn't keep calling me in all the time. But I took it this way. A lot of people I know would be upset about it, but I look at it this way. They're doing their job. They're trying to make sure people that are not coming here illegally or criminals coming in. And I was eventually able to fix the issue so that it didn't happen to me any longer. But, I can't fault them, for trying to keep people that shouldn't be in the country from coming in.
No, yeah, at least they were doing their due diligence.
yeah, Smith is almost as common as Patel.
Well, I can add on to this about the Smith thing, because we lived in Rochester, New York, growing up, and our neighbor directly across the street from us was Mr. Jones. So we had the Joneses living across the street from the Smiths. So if you want a story, I can tell you about that one. So.
So, Bill, we talked offline about the deportation of students. There was the judge that ordered flights to return to the United States. I think one of the flights did turn around. It was not in international waters. I think it's a little tricky to order airliners to turn around. You've got to consider how much fuel they have. They have to have divert fuel, and then they have to have 20 minutes of loiter time. When you're flying across the ocean, there's a point of no return where you've gone so far that you can't go back. You'll run out of gas. But yeah, there's been some things that I've not been too happy with, some of which I understand and some of which I don't. Do you have some feelings about this?
So the first thing I did want to say, I think it's in our best best interest to take the Secretary of State at his word, to say, if he says a person is dangerous, it's probably best policy to say, okay, we'll take him at his word and require significant proof that he's being disingenuous. So I say, look, the Secretary of State has the right to say you can have a visa and you can't. I think it's problematic to be revoking visas for behavior that's not illegal. Whether or not, if illegal behavior is occurring, then obviously people need to be arrested and held to account. I think, once again, I think the Secretary of State has the right to revoke visas, but I think we need to be very careful with this, particularly if it hasn't been something we've done in the past. I mean, you could just do a lot of damage. And I do think the U.S. university system is going to suffer because we're going to be turning away, and universities even now are turning away. This is for other issues regarding funding, but turning away students who they made offers to. I think that's problematic. However, I think the picking up people by plainclothes officers, that is not what we should be doing in this country. I think uniformed officers can pick people up. There's nothing wrong with uniformed officers picking people up. And I just think, the only reason for doing things in certain ways is to intimidate. And I don't like the government intimidating anyone. Even if it's not me, I don't care for that. So, I think things can be done in a better way. Like I said, I give the Secretary of State the benefit of the doubt. If he says somebody shouldn't have a visa, that's fine, but things should be done in a specific way.
I was upset when I heard that some arresting officers were wearing ski masks. I thought that was un-American, but I talked to someone I know in the Marshal Service, and they're apparently dealing with doxing against police officers, and that of in itself is not a good thing. A, it's abusive of police officers, and B, you probably could get shot if you went too far. So, yes, John.
Backing the bus up a little bit, when I was out of the room, you said you think it's kind of difficult to turn a plane around once it's gone past the point of no return. Would it have been possible for the command of the aircraft to radio to them and say, look, when you land, refuel and bring everybody back? Why didn't that happen? That's the alarm for do the announcements. But, I mean, the judge said, bring them back. And it was certainly possible to just turn that plane around, refuel it, and bring it back with everybody on board. Thoughts?
So if I may, my understanding, if we're talking about the same case, these were two plane loads that were going to El Salvador. They were actually not heading to El Salvador. They were stopping in the Dominican Republic to refuel. So they were between the U.S. and Dominican Republic. They did refuel after the judge said, turn around and come back. They did refuel in Dominican Republic, if I'm not mistaken, and then proceeded on to El Salvador in contradiction to what the court had ordered the administration to do. So if that's the case, I don't think there's any situation where they couldn't have turned around. It looks to me like a deliberate flaunting of the law, but I don't know if there's any other way to view it or not.
Well, also, on the judge's part, he's using his privilege. I think he's abusing his privilege.
Well, judges interpret the law, right? So the judge has the right to say, no, you have to go through these legal means before you can deport these people.
Did the judge order the company operating the airplanes to turn them around, or did he order the government to negotiate with the company to turn them around?
I didn't know they were private planes. I thought they were Air Force planes.
No. They're,
That's a whole host of a different color. You can't tell Delta what to do. You can't tell TWA, use TWA for an example, because they're gone, but maybe they're coming back. Eastern, you can't tell Eastern Airlines what to do?
I have been,
The court can say, if you do that, it's against the law, you need to not do that. The court can clearly say
And
that.
fine Eastern Airlines. Where's the fine for Eastern Airlines?
So, if I understand right, when the refueling was done, Bill, they were outside U.S. territorial airspace? Is that, they were outside?
Yeah, so the refueling, if I'm not, it was in Dominican Republic, I think.
Okay. So does a
So that's
federal
outside the
judge
U.S., of course.
my question then is, does the federal judge have the right, once a airplane is outside of U.S. airspace like that, to say, hey, you got to turn that around and bring it back? Does his jurisdiction extend outside the U.S.?
Well,
So that's my question.
So the first thing I would say is the only reason they were outside the U.S. in the first place is because the administration, I'm going to interpret their behavior, was trying to make them outside the U.S. before the judge could rule on the ruling. They knew that this ruling was coming. They had a court date, and they flew them out before the court date deliberately because they knew the judge was going potentially to say something like, no, you can't send them. And so I would argue, because it was done specifically to get away from the court, yes, he's in force. Now, of course, you could say, well, what if they were shipped out 6 months ago? Yeah, that's a different case. But when, if you're speeding in Lowell and you drive fast to get out of the city limits, you can't then say to the police, well, I wasn't in Lowell because you didn't pull me over till the next city. Well, that's not how that works, right? If you're trying to get away so you're not in their jurisdiction, you're still in their jurisdiction.
Well, but Mike, just pushing back on you, a Greyhound bus, unless the Greyhound bus gets a call from his dispatcher to turn the bus around, he's going to continue to his destination.
Sure.
I'm
administration-
not a lawyer, and I'm not a judge, obviously. But my question is how far does the jurisdiction of that district federal court judge extend? Can he make decisions for the whole country? And I think the Supreme Court is dealing with that issue right now. What their jurisdiction is in that recent ruling. So I'm still trying to understand what they were saying from the Supreme Court. I got to do some more reading, but
6 nautical miles.
Yeah, well, I understand about how far out it is, but for example, a plane is out over the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, okay, and they're not beyond the return point, okay, Cliff. Can the government tell them they got to turn around? Do they have? Or that's something the company has to decide that runs that airplane. I mean, that's my question. Who really has authority to do all that? So.
Well, plus you've got, whose airspace are they in?
Exactly. So this is, I understand what the government did. I do understand that. And I understand, what the judge was deciding. But the question is with all these different district federal courts decisions for the whole country, and that's something more at the Supreme Court level that, how that's done. And I'm just concerned about, with the judge shopping from both the conservatives and the liberals, both sides, this judge shopping going on, and that's making people not believe in our law system. They don't trust it anymore because they're just trying to find the right judge that's going to give them the result they want.
Right, and I also think that word, the judge can interpret the law, gives a lot of leeway, and I'm not so sure about what exactly you guys are talking about with the federal stuff. I kind of have an idea, but I relate everything to the Karen Reed trial. And I see, that interpretation of any judge needs to be respected by another judge, and it's a solid, like, black line there.
Well, I mean, there is an appeals process, right? There's a way that if you say, no, this judge didn't do things the right way, there's an appeals process. But I think the court said, no, you have to wait, you have to go through a due process to show that these guys actually should be deported. And what we've seen now, we know, and the administration has said, they made a mistake. They shipped a person to El Salvador that doesn't belong, at least one person. Suppose it was you, though, John. Suppose you were in El Salvador. Gee, that would be unfortunate, wouldn't it?
Bill, wait a second now.
The fact of the matter is the court, hold on, let me finish. That person should not have been shipped. The administration has said it. The court said it. The court said you can't ship this guy. They shipped him anyway. And then the court said, wait, we need to do due process for these guys. And the administration shipped them anyway. So the administration is wrong for that person unequivocally. That's what the courts wanted. Let it go through the process. And the administration didn't. So that guy got hurt because of it.
You done?
I agree with you, Bill, about that.
Bill, hold
with
on
the
for a
due
second,
process thing.
Bill,
And that is important, that you go through due process. And you have to remember, this person had a green card, was a legal resident. If they were not illegally without a green residence, then they need to,
my point is, every American, every person who jumped over the fence, in Mexico or Canada is going to be looking over their shoulder for the rest of their life. We got an ad on TV right now, this beautiful gal says, if you're here illegally, you should go back home because we're going to come get you. And they're buying ads on television telling everybody that. So 6 months from now, I don't know where we're going to be at with this, but Trump was elected on taking care of this issue. Would you disagree, Bill?
That's a significant part of why he was elected.
Okay.
Not the only, I don't think that's the only reason.
Oh, no, I understand, but did he say he'd take care of this?
He said he would in his first administration, too. He said he was going to build a wall. I remember that.
I know you don't like President Trump.
No, I don't like that he doesn't keep his word. That's what I don't
respect that you have a
like.
distaste for President Trump, but he got elected to do that.
He did. That's a part of why people elected him,
If you
yes.
hire me to paint your house, and I don't paint your house, I just take your money, that's not okay. Trump, one of the ingredients to get elected was to take care of this illegals jumping over the border issue.
And I think he should do it, but I think he should do it legally, not illegally. I don't think he should break the law to do it.
Agreed. Now, to John's point, there are people who are here legally who are looking over their shoulder. I know someone who adopted a child from Central America. The child is a U.S. citizen, and they're nervous about what the administration is going to do. I know someone who was born in the United States, is a U.S. citizen, birthright citizen, but who has parents from the Far East, and they're nervous about the administration rolling back their citizenship. So there are people who are nervous who I think should have no reason to be nervous. And I think that that's unfortunate.
Any of you guys know what's going on with birthright? How's that doing in the courts? Birthright citizenship.
Just working its way.
Well, last time I was here, I made an unequivocal statement about it. I know you like me to make unequivocal
Go
statements.
right ahead. Repeat it.
That in order to remove birthright citizenship, you will need a constitutional amendment. That's it.
I understand.
I disagree, but I mean,
It's up to the judge, isn't it?
I'm for birthright citizenship, but I don't think that the 14th Amendment gave it to us.
Well, I think that they're going to go judge shopping on that one. Judge shopping should be illegal. We should be able to fire some of these judges.
John, it's going to have to go to the Supreme Court.
I just think it's more, we're just going to have to wait and see what happens on that. Because there's a lot of back and forth on that. And And if it gets to the Supreme Court on something like that, I'd be very interested to see how that happens. But for right now, birthright citizenship is an accepted thing in the country. I think the big issue is about the anchor baby situations. And that's where people get upset. You know, people come here illegally and they're here in the country illegally and they have a child. And now that child's a U.S. citizen. So in the past, they would not deport the parents because they didn't want the child to grow up without the parents. The Tom Homan, though, looks at things a little differently. He's like, well, we'll just deport the whole family, and then when that child is old enough, they go back in here, claim their U.S. citizenship, and we're done with it. So it's the way they approach it now is different. And I'm not saying I agree with that, but the way they're approaching that is they're saying, not denying that child citizenship, but they're saying you got to go back with your parents, and then when you're old enough, you can come in the United States. And I think they're doing that to deter this anchor baby situation. So they're not saying that they're not allowing that child to have citizenship right now, but they're also saying that just because they had a baby here doesn't mean that all of them are going to stay in the United States.
We need to spend a lot more money on judges and courts and have hearings. I would like to see people come across the border and have a hearing that day and decide if they can stay or go back. I think that makes a lot of sense.
I don't disagree with you on that, Bill. But the problem is we had so many illegals coming in at once that there's no way we could do that. Now that...
But we should at least try. I think to let someone live in the U.S., even illegally for 20 years, and then ship them back is a lot more challenging than if they walk across the border, 2 hours later they have a hearing with a judge, and the judge says, I'm sorry, you don't meet the qualifications to stay, and send them back.
Bill, there's no mindset.
Well, I think the compromise that came up with Trump was that he had to remain in Mexico. And he says, you stay in Mexico, and as soon as we have a judge available to look at your situation, then we'll do that. That's not the best thing. Like I said, I agree with you, Bill. It would be nice if we could have that taken care of right away. But I'm hoping that with less illegals coming across, that they'll deal with things faster. But our whole immigration system is a total mess.
It's broken.
You know, yeah, because I've been through it. I'm a U.S. citizen, but with Kathy, I've been through it. And it took us 2.5 years for Kathy to get her green card back, even though she had lived here for 25 years, graduated from high school in Florida in the U.S., and had green cards before, paid into the Social Security system, paid her taxes, all the other things, and it still took 2.5 years. There's something definitely wrong with the way our system is moving to have that happen.
Okay, Eileen, go ahead.
I was just going to say, isn't there a whole situation about whether they go in front of a federal or a state judge? And doesn't it take longer for them to go in front of a federal judge as opposed to a state judge? And then I was just also kind of stuck on unequivocally when Bill, you announced it, right? Unequivocally. And then should we just assume now that everything Cliff has ever said is unequivocable? Unequivocally.
One thing I'd like to say, Eileen, is when you're mentioning state and federal judges, immigration is a federal issue, so they would not be going before a state judge at all. They have to go before a federal judge.
And doesn't that take longer?
Yeah.
I understand, but
Years.
it's a federal issue, so the state judges don't have jurisdiction over that. I understand that, but it's federal.
Hey, look, let me just put this in there. There's no mindset in Washington, D.C. Ed Markey is sleeping in this morning. Elizabeth Warren, she's got her head on the pillow, and so does Lori Trahan. There's no mindset to fix immigration in Washington, D.C. That was another thing that President Trump was elected on, to fix this immigration issue. And I think that's coming around the curve. But right now, have you heard Lori Trahan talk about any of this? I haven't. Same thing with Elizabeth Warren and Ed Markey. They just go, Trump's wrong. And the media has no courage to push back against any elected official that, no, you're wrong, Elizabeth. Why has immigration been so screwed up for my entire lifetime? Back over to you, Cliff.
So I want to push back a little, John, because Donald Trump was elected, President Trump was elected in 2016 to fix immigration, and I don't think he made a lot of progress there. We still have a
What
problem.
did Elizabeth Warren do about it?
Elizabeth Warren was not
How about
elected.
your other buddy, Ed Markey?
Neither of them are my buddies.
How about Lori Trahan? What's she done for it?
Probably a limited amount. But the fact of the matter is that you're proposing Donald Trump was elected to solve this problem. I agree, in 2016, he had important and strong plans for fixing it, and he didn't do it. He was
we
president for
talking-
4 years. That's the most powerful office in the United
I
States.
don't want to talk about this until the sun burns out, Mike, but the fact is, all talk and no action. Down in Washington, D.C., they all have the same breakfast cereal, nut and honey, because that's what's going to happen about immigration across the
Let's
whole
take
United
a break.
States. Nut and honey, that's what they have for breakfast, and that's what's going to happen in
The Republicans are eating that too, John.
Eileen, are you
in
staying,
Washington.
Okay.
Eileen, are you staying late or are you going off to work?
No, I'm going to go off to work.
So can you give us a quick rundown on the Karen Reed trial?
Ooh, so today they're expecting for the last day of jury selection today, and tomorrow I hear opening statements are supposed to begin. So it should be interesting.
They've got a big buffer zone around the courthouse?
Yeah, and are you familiar with Mark Randazza? Yeah, I guess he put in a federal lawsuit against the judge for requiring that.
It disrupts the court. They should have no loudness, no loudspeakers, no yelling. If you yell, you're arrested.
Right, it should be basic, common sense stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, I've been to these things and listen to how ridiculous they are with their bullhorns, screaming at people at these rallies they have. Bullhorns should not be allowed, and screaming at people should not be allowed. And
No,
it is,
I agree.
on both sides of the aisle.
Okay, so let's go back to students here on visas. If they're out in loud demonstrations, are they breaking the law? Should we send them home?
If they're the loudmouths, yes.
Okay.
What do you think, Bill?
So there are cases where it's unequivocally, sorry to use the word again.
Oh, boy.
What other word can I use?
What do you mean by
It's clear. There's
Without a doubt.
without a doubt, if they break the law, then their visa should
What's
be
the law?
revoked.
What's
Well, assault with a deadly weapon, or
a verbal assault?
that's not a crime to yell at someone. I don't know what you mean by assault. You mean to yell at
You
someone?
can yell at somebody
Yeah.
to break the law. I'm going to kill you. I just broke the law.
I don't think so. I don't. Now, if you say that about the president, that is against the law.
I think if you say it about anybody,
I
you could
don't.
be arrested.
I don't think so.
What if you detain two janitors and don't allow them out of the building?
I'm
I hope
not
they
sure
brought their lunch.
what circumstance you're talking about specifically.
That was occupation of a building in
But-
at Columbia University.
So if someone is held in a criminal offense or is in a criminal proceeding, I think that's clear. It's not ambiguous. On the other extreme, so let's go to another extreme and say, for someone to make a statement that says, oh, probably there's a lot of Palestinians that are getting killed in Gaza, they shouldn't be killed, that's probably not something you should revoke someone's visa for. Now, the Secretary of State has said, but these people are supporting Hamas. Now, that's a different circumstance, but then we have to think a little bit about, like, now it gets a little gray, and it's harder one person I heard of went to a funeral for a Hamas leader. So I think, it starts getting tricky to say when we should be revoking and not revoking visas. What I would say is we should not lightly revoke a visa. If we give someone a visa, we should try to let them keep that visa. Because otherwise it becomes arbitrary and sort of like, we changed our mind. Do you need to use a new mic?
No, I'm set.
Okay.
As long as the red light's on. But speaking of universities and problems, I understand applications for Ivy League schools are down. But I saw an article that said that one of our big industries in Massachusetts, education, is in a little bit of trouble. We've had a couple of colleges close and enrollment's going down. Young males are less interested, and heck, there's less population anyway. U.Mass Lowell's going to soldier on, of course, but are we in some trouble in our business area?
Well, I think the long-term trends is not great. We're having fewer kids, and that means the university, people turning 18. When people turn 18, that's typically when they go to college, and the number of 18-year-olds is not growing the way it used to. There's also a hiccup that was caused by the financial crisis in 2008. So people had fewer kids in 2008, and that hiccup will sort of trickle through as students go through. We're 18 years out from that, so that means the number of 18-year-olds is down this year. It did recover fairly quickly, but the long-term trend is not favorable for universities generally. The universities and colleges we see closed tend to be small. They tend to be liberal arts schools. They tend to not be well funded. I know you're very concerned, John, over there about Harvard. It's okay, John. Harvard's going to be just fine.
Hey, that's my alma mater. Leave them alone. They're good people.
But even the small schools with significant funding, they will be fine. But some of the smaller schools that don't have funding are going to be under a lot of pressure. You're going to see more of them either merging or looking to be acquired by state systems and that kind of thing. So yeah, there's pressure.
I can add a little bit on to that because my brother used to be a vice president at more than one college. And we've had this discussion, actually we had this discussion at least a couple of years ago. And he says, don't be surprised that a lot of colleges or universities are going to start closing because exactly what you're saying with the population going there and the cost. More and more people are looking at the ROI, the return on investment. You're spending $100,000 to go to college, and what are you getting for that, in the long term? And there's more and more opportunities now to be in the trades, such as electricians, plumbers, pipe fitters, welders. And it used to be looked at, hey, those guys don't make as much money, it's hard work. But now people are looking at, a lot of these trades, they're making six-figure incomes because, it's a very highly skilled field to go through at the apprenticeship. I mean, I went to an apprenticeship for 3 years, and that served me well. I didn't go and get a college education. So, and my son, who has a college degree, works in the trades. And he makes really good money. So, I just think they're starting to look more and more that, and that's why the liberal arts colleges may be closing because they don't give you enough return on your investment. So yes, I agree that this is going to be an issue over the next decade. You'll see a lot fewer higher ed institutions around. There's going to be a bunch that will be closing down.
The biggest problem that the universities have is I can go to Harvard, I can go to UCLA on my computer. Now, that's how people are going to school. The diploma, when I graduate from UCLA, it's the exact same diploma as if I went to that school for 4 years. When it's hanging on the wall, it looks exactly the same. it's appreciated or respected by wherever. I graduated UCLA. I graduated Harvard. It's respected by everybody who's out. The diploma is exactly the same. Electronic education is taking over the whole system. It's just easier to go to UCLA on my keyboard. Back to you, Cliff.
Yeah, but the bureaucrats at U.Mass have perverted the law because it used to be if you were Native American, a veteran, over 60-something, you could do continuing ed for $35 a
Cliff,
semester.
you've been bellyaching about that
I'm not finished yet.
for 10 years.
I know, and it's wrong. And they're arguing color of money. So UMass Lowell's making good money off of continuing ed online courses.
Cliff, it's a state school. Why do we even pay to go there?
Yeah.
It's a government school. Why do we pay
Well,
to go there?
Unfortunately, Representative Tara Hung didn't come in today, so we can't ask him.
Tara Hung banged out. He's had a doctor's appointment or something like that, and he promises to rebook in the future.
Perfect. Do you want to do the announcements before the clock runs out?
No, there's no parties that are happening this. Rita Mercy is the only one having a party this week, so I'll just go to her party and we'll do everybody else. Where's Rita? Rita's coming up the 18th, so she's next week. She's this week. So Rita Mercy's party, a yummy party. It's going to be this Friday night. I know it's Good Friday, and nonetheless, it'll be a great feedback. Re-elect Rita Mercy this Friday, April 18th, 6 to 8 p.m. at the Bunting Club, 449 Boylston Street in South Lowell. $10 to get in. Of course, if you want to write a check for 100, it's even better. Back to you, Cliff. Thanks.
Okay, John, so I'm going to return the favor. What's a bunting?
They made cloth.
It's what?
Cloth. They made cloth. Bunting.
Okay.
They were-
Yep, he's right about that. Yep.
Oh, hey, just a minute, Mr. Smart Aleck. I got something over the weekend for you. Got this one. Look, I got to write it. I wrote it down. I got to ask Cliff this question. What's PARS? P-A-R-S.
It's a radar, perimeter radar.
Wrong. Pilot Assisted Recovery System built into every F-16. Do you know what it does?
It assists the.
No. We're asking
I have no
the
idea.
colonel. We're asking the
I have
colonel.
no idea what you're talking about.
You got to be kidding me. You don't know? I love this when I get Cliff on one of these things. It's a button every F-16 has that if the pilot thinks he's upside down or he's sideways and he or she can't figure it out, they press this button and the computer will self-right the plane. So you're...
This is
Heads
past
up.
my time.
Well, I just want to let you... I saw a video on the week. I says, I wonder if Cliff knows this one.
Now, John, did you say PARS? P-A-R-S?
P-A-R-S, Pilot Assisted Recovery System.
Well, I just looked it up, and it says it stands also for Pre-Arrival Review System used by the Canadian Border Services. So it could be used...
Mike, I'm
you know,
sure we can get some
this is
sexual connotation
multi-used
into
by
this,
different
too.
Things, so.
Back over to Cliff. Thanks.
So there we are. So
Oh, I just wanted to say one thing. Kathy went up this past week. She's coming back today. She had to go to a funeral for a cousin who passed away. So it'll be interesting. She flew into Buffalo from Tampa and then went across the border into Canada. And she didn't have any issues. So I'm waiting to see when she comes back to Buffalo today to see, because she has a green card, what happens at the border. So I'll give you all more updates on that next Monday. And because I know there's a lot of issues with people coming from Canada to the U.S. now. So I just I can give you a personal update then.
good, and then she can tell us how the election's going too, because it'll be a week out then. next Monday.
Okay.
So, there was some discussion about the hands-off demonstrations last Saturday. Saturday before was the Kia Tesla day. But
There was a Kia Tesla day. I didn't hear that. Okay.
there were demonstrations against Tesla the week before.
Okay.
Fire bombings of cars and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So-
that's not good.
Some people were upset because the demonstrators here in Lowell were standing on the Lad Whitney Memorial.
Their graves.
Yeah,
Glad and Whitney are buried there.
okay.
And Paul Boulay went by, took pictures, and put out there that's not good. And one of the characters wrote back, "Let the dead fend for themselves." And I think that, first of all, they should not have been standing on that grass. And second, they shouldn't have had, no one should have had a remark like that back to anybody. Those guys died serving this country, and they should be respected for that. Fend for yourself? That person's needs to have their head examined. Terrible thing to say. So I invited Paul to come in today. He did not return my voicemail, so I'm going to guess he's a pretty busy guy, Paul Boulay.
So, Bill, you know Lad and Whitney are the first casualties of the Civil War?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they were killed in a riot in Baltimore, Maryland. They arrived by train at the north end of town, and there were apparently, like Boston, the railroad wasn't connected through at the time. And they and a third person died in a riot from Lowell. I can't remember what the third person's name is. That's too bad. But I think that these demonstrations, I was surprised they didn't have another one this weekend, that there's no leadership in the Democratic Party, so the radical fringe is taking over, it seems to me. But
Well,
who's in charge?
speaking as someone who's not in a political party, I
Very
think
democratically leaning, however.
I have my own ideas, and that's okay. I can have my own ideas. You have your own ideas too.
I'm just giving you a little criticism while we can.
So I think actually I think there are a lot of people who are unhappy with Donald Trump who are also unhappy with the Democratic Party. I think those are both reasonable positions to hold, and so it's not clear to me. Like, okay, let's say the demonstrations were led by a specific Democrat. I don't know. Pick. I don't know, who would you pick? The governor of California, or
No.
Newsom, or I don't know.
no, they're all staying out of it. It's, groups like 50501 and Indivisible and organizations like that. I mean, you have Bernie Sanders and Sandy Ocasio-Cortez going out on the anti-oligarchy presentations, but they're not leading these demonstrations.
Yeah, I mean they're actually attracting big crowds. I think they're raising concerns about very rich people taking a lot of control of government. I think that's their, anti-oligarchy is sort of their thing. But I think all three of us would agree that they're not mainstream Democrats. They're left of the average
Yes,
Democrat.
they are.
And so, I don't know. I mean,
But do you think she's saying that the election in November was not legitimate?
so the only person that I've heard truly call into question the legitimacy of elections is Donald Trump. I don't think I've heard a lot of leaders on the left, saying, but the election was rigged or stolen, or I don't hear that. I don't know where
Stacey
you.
Abrams.
There's an exception to every rule.
Stacey Abrams.
Georgia.
Oh,
Should have been governor.
so which election was she talking about specifically?
While you guys are pondering this, tomorrow's City Life,
4 years ago.
Bobby Hoey's going to be
6.
here. City Councilor Eric Kitchen is going to be here. Josh Taylor was going to come, but he's not able to come tomorrow. Ned Tommy, hopeful to see Ned. I don't think we will. And Tom Baumel. And tomorrow is tax day. Are your taxes done? If they're not done, tomorrow is the deadline. So just think about it. Did you file your taxes? I hope you did. Back to you, Cliff. Time is short.
Yeah, I think that was 6 years ago, Stacey Abrams.
Cliff, can you choke up on your mic?
Yeah, 6 years ago.
4
Stacey.
inches, 4 inches.
Your red light's off.
Oh, yeah, the battery ran out.
No, I put new batteries this morning.
Tap
Take
it.
the phone one. There you
Here we go. I wasn't using it enough. So, World Economic Forum, I see where Klaus Schwab had to resign. Is World Economic Forum, do you think that stuff's all dead?
I doubt it. Those guys are very influential. I didn't hear this about him resigning, so I don't know anything specifically about it. But I don't think those things will go away.
That's, in my mind, that's too bad. It's sort of like wokeism.
So,
to
Bill,
me.
time is short. Have you discovered any new restaurants around that you really enjoyed over the last time since we saw you?
New restaurants.
Well, time, we're going to be out of time. I meant to say this, I meant to say that.
Yeah, no, I haven't. I'm
How
sorry.
about you, Cliff?
Well, Martha just out of the blue Tuesday last week said, let's go to Applebee's for lunch, and we did, and it was very tasty. I enjoyed it.
Ellen and I went to Applebee's, and they're getting another 6 months off.
There was,
2 for $25 tempted us out there.
we don't have time to talk about the homeless man. Homelessness and the fact that we're not doing mental health in Massachusetts is a disgrace. At least it seems that way to me.
And the government is subsidizing this operation.
Mike?
Yes.
Any thought before you go?
Well, I hope everybody has a good day.
Yeah, 10 seconds,
I'm gonna
Mike.
go pick up Kathy later on today and probably take her out to dinner since she's been gone for like a week. So hopefully we'll do that, and we'll see how the week goes. But hopefully everything is going to be fine up for you guys in Massachusetts.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
And thanks, Bill, for coming in. I
You're welcome.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I always enjoy having discussions when you're on the podcast. We probably agree more than we both think we do. So.
That's okay.
Thanks, guys. See
Bye-bye.
you
Bye.
tomorrow.
All right. We'll see ya. All right. Have a good day, everybody. Have a good day, everybody.
You too.
Nice job, boys.
I always enjoy having
Was that Lincoln or no?
podcast.
Mine was
We
blinking.
probably agree more than we both think we do. So.
That's okay.
Thanks, guys. Bye tomorrow.
We'll see ya. All right. Have a good day, everybody.
I only want to back. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye. Bye, Mike. I always have fun with you guys. statements that I'm not equivocating on, right?
Yeah.
Like, just tell me how it is. Stop saying on the other hand, this is the wrong argument. Can I get a one argument? This does say on the other hand.
This is the Democrat side of me. It's gonna be fantastic.
What is?
It's gonna be fantastic. Like the one that says I've been forced by Democrat custom life. He's having a getting the pit for 30 years.
The airport, I don't